Hello and welcome to the Apologetics 315 podcast with your hosts Brian Auten and Chad Gross. Join us for conversations and interviews on the topics of apologetics, evangelism, and the Christian worldview.
Can I have your watch when you are dead?
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Apologetics 315 podcast. And in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about our topic of the day, which is debates. Debates about the existence of God, debates about apologetic issues, all the things we like. And I'm going to give you my 7 reasons to listen to debates. We're going to talk about our favorite debates. Why are we talking about debates? Are you some sort of debate aficionado?
Well, I do enjoy debates quite a bit. And as soon as I became a Christian, before I became a Christian, I was 25. I'm 47 now. And I really didn't read a lot. And when I was looking into Christianity, I found written debates. If you remember that website, it was like Leader U.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and it had a number of printed debates on it. And I started reading a lot of those. A lot of those were William Lane Craig debates, just because that's what I came across. I didn't know much about him. And then once I became a Christian and became more, I think, efficient using the internet and stuff and more on it, I found all these debates and I found them super helpful. So I kind of see debates as like my Super Bowl. When people get really excited about the big game, I get really excited about upcoming debates and really get a thrill and a rush listening to them. So we got an email from a listener named Jason, and Jason, thank you so much. And he said this. He said, for a future podcast, I would really love the debate aficionado, Chad. Yeah, well, I will proudly wear that title. Thank you. To share some of his best ever debates and to recommend where I would start if I wanted to check out some debates. I think instead of resorting to my comfortable but ultimately useless late night pro wrestling watching sessions, maybe in 2024, listening to some enlightening debates would be a great life change. So, of course, I completely support that decision. And we are here today to bring you some of our favorite debates, not just my favorite debates.
Yes, well, and Chad, I see that you're donning your monocle as the aficionado, and you.
Indeed, I am.
Or it's like, the like jewelers have those little things they put up to their eye to like. Look at, oh yeah, sure.
Yes.
I would love to have one of those things. Like if a customer brings in a leaf spring.
Oh, you would look so cool.
Hey, can you fix this trailer spring? Sure. Let me just. Look at it really close. Oh, yeah, there's definitely micro fractures in the steel.
Yeah, and dude, it wouldn't even need to have glass in it. It could just you just put it up to your eye and look through the hole, but it would just make you look really cool.
All right, so I have concocted my 7 reasons that you should listen to debates. So I'm going to offer 3 that come to my mind as far as debates that I think are notable ones. I mean, I've listened to so many debates. I enjoyed them all.
Yeah.
But,
Brian, one of the things I realized when I was compiling these was it's one of those things where it's like if somebody said to me, "Who can you name all your favorite hockey players?" I would give you a list. And then for like a week or two, I would be going, "Oh my gosh, I forgot this guy," or "Oh my gosh, I forgot this guy." I feel the same way with these debates.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I'm going to be adding to the list. These are just the ones that initially came to my mind.
And you know what, though? Part of the thing that makes the ones that we may be selecting as favorites or, wow, that was a great debate, they come out of the context of listening to probably hundreds of debates by now, right?
Absolutely.
And to finding not only the ways that people argue for their positions and try to persuade or do it poorly, or there's good interaction, there's bad interaction. Some of these debates are like clown shows. If you go to something like Modern Day Debate or something, you might get one out of 100 that is really great, but the rest is just more, it is like pro wrestling, it is just like, okay, now you're going to grab a chair and start swinging it at any moment. It's just silly. But the proper academic debates that are on university campuses or in hosted venues with people who really know both sides, good representatives of both sides, Plus, the people who are coming and attending tend to be really sold out into their sides as well. They're all there to hear the really good defenders defend their sides. And at any rate, what makes some of these debates so great is they just rise to the top, and they show that this is really either great content or great form or both, or great arguments, or, you know what, both these guys were so cordial, and they brought something where it wasn't just a conflict, it was an interaction or a discussion. And it was like, wow, everybody walked away like honoring the other person and honoring the exchange of ideas, so that they can be really great. Best ones can be really great. But you only really realize that if you have listened to a lot of debates.
Yeah, I was thinking as I was compiling mine, how interesting it was to me that the reason I picked some of the various debates, some of the reasons were quite different. In other words, something really valuable happened in one debate, and then another debate I really picked for a completely different reason. And it also got me thinking about the three forms of persuasion that are helpful to keep in mind when you're listening to a debate, known as logos, ethos, and pathos. So logos is an appeal to an audience's reason. So this is where you're building up logical arguments. This is where somebody like William Lane Craig is very good at this. Jeffrey J. Lauder is very good at this. But then you have ethos. This is an appeal to the speaker's status or authority. And this makes the audience more likely to trust them because they can show themselves to be an authority on the topic. And then, of course, there's pathos, which is appeals to emotions. And this is like you're trying to make the audience feel angry or sympathetic or invoke some kind of emotion to get them on your side. And I think of someone like Christopher Hitchens, who was really good at that. And so those are also, as I was thinking about the debates I picked, it was just really interesting because some of them are really strong kind of in the logos arena, and then other ones maybe in the pathos arena. And so I thought that was really interesting too.
Yeah, I tend to think too that the best persuaders are using all three of those. And I think you
agreed.
And some of our favorite debaters, they truly, I do think William Lane Craig embodies that. He might be one of the strongest, logical defenders, but he doesn't rely solely on that. I think there's that ethos part where you just trust his character and his, he's truly a man of integrity. He never talks negatively of his opponents. He's always charitable, but then he does appeal to emotion. And this may be his weaker point, is he doesn't really go to try to pull on people's heartstrings. But when you're talking about stuff like his conversion story, or, why put your trust in Jesus, he does offer his personal appeal. He shares his personal stories. And he also, you can't avoid it when you're talking about like the moral argument for the existence of God. You've got that appeal to our intuition, our moral intuitions and stuff. And so I think that, he does use that as well to rightly invoke our moral outrage at certain things because, with certain examples. And I think that's completely proper use of rhetoric in that context. But I think another thing I would want to touch on is that some of the great debates are ones that are well moderated. There's clear time limits.
That's a great point.
There's clear time limits. There's good rapport that's built. There's good, everybody knows what to expect. That, it's not like the person who's moderating is on one side or the other, and saying weird remarks or stuff like that. And when the moderator is horrible, it doesn't matter. It's almost like you could have two great debaters and the moderator just ruins it.
And speaking of being a moderator, and I'm just thinking here my own experience, I've had the opportunity to moderate one debate. And my preparation for the debate was to read both of the opening statements because both of the debaters sent them to me. And I'm also pretty sure that they exchanged them. And this was between Tyler Vila, when he was still a Christian, and Ben Watkins of Real Way Theology. And what struck me when I was moderating the debate is when you watch someone moderate a debate, it looks like the easiest job on the stage. It looks like, they're not doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but it's actually a little more challenging than one thinks, especially during what happened in the debate I moderated, was that I was supposed to use audience generated questions in the time where the debaters would cross-examine one another, and then I was supposed to ask them questions, but the audience was relatively small. So I had to come up with the questions kind of on the fly. And so that was tricky. And I still to this day remember a moment in the debate as if I'm still sitting there. That's how ingrained it is in my memory of a question I wish I would have asked Ben that I didn't. And I still think back to like, why would I not ask him? That was like the golden opportunity. So moderators don't have an easy job either, is my point.
You remind me of Larry, the cameraman on Groundhog Day, when he goes up to the girl and he's like, people think that I just get the camera and point it at stuff, but it is way more complicated than that.
Oh, man. That's good stuff.
Okay, so a few minutes ago, I told everybody that I was going to give them my 7 reasons to listen to debates, and then we went off on a tangent.
We're still going to do that.
So, 7 reasons to listen to debates, and we'll talk about them. The first reason is that you hear, hopefully, and I'm going to use the word hopefully in a lot of these, but let's just, instead of me saying hopefully you hear this, hopefully you're actually going to get good arguments, I'm going to just say these are the best, under the best conditions.
Right.
These are the the good things you're going to get out of the debates. So you're going to hear the best defenders of each point of view. So hopefully you will. And the idea here is that you can hear a couple of people yammering back and forth about, oh, the earth is young. No, the earth is old. Old earth, young earth. Or it could be Calvinism or Arminianism. All right. This is mostly not the debates we're talking about. Mostly it's atheism versus Christianity or some sort of secular worldview. These are the most prevalent debates I think me and you are interacting with, or the resurrection debates, things like that.
Yes.
But when it comes to hearing the best defenders, you don't want to hear 2 people yammering. You want to hear people who they've written multiple books on the subject. They have PhDs in the subject. They are ardent advocates, and they are... they've been doing this their whole life. They're the authorities. You want to hear, if possible, you want to hear the authorities on this subject argue about this thing. So you don't want 2 amateurs, and you're never going to get anything out of amateur clown show debate hour except just noise. That's my opinion. So a good reason to listen to debates is so that you might hear the best defenders of each point of view, and you should probably try to avoid the ones that you don't even, they have no credential.
You know what I've seen? Yeah, I do. And I think that's a great point. But I've also seen, Brian, that those who know their topic really well are more confident and less defensive, which makes for a better discussion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so those who don't know the topic as well, or those amateurs that you're talking about, I mean, everybody who debates has to start with their first debate, right? I understand that, but they should wade into that debate having an expertise in their field. So the first one is...
You hear the best defenders of each point of view.
Yep.
My second point is that you hear actual arguments, hopefully, without interruptions. So, you know how if 2 people are talking, or you hear people yammering, you're having a discussion, it's hard to parse out unless you're a person who thinks in a logical way in this sense, where you're looking for actual arguments. If you hear a couple of people having a deep conversation about the subject, let's say it's evolution versus intelligent design. That's a popular one. You hear 2 people talking about that or having a discussion. You might not actually come away with arguments. You might have been like, wow, they were all over the map on this topic. But if you have a formal debate where there's opening statements, then there's secondary statements, there's cross-examination and responses and things, then you're going to actually hear, hey, if this person's making a case for their position, how would they lay that out to persuade the hearer? Well, they would have to make arguments. And so you're going to hear premises, you're going to hear reasons, and it's going to be laid out, hopefully, in a very systematic, logical, formal way, and with ethos, pathos, and logos.
Yes.
They're going to use proper rhetoric to do that and to persuade you. And you want to hear the best people laying the arguments out in the best possible way to make their case, because I want to hear the best possible case for atheism or whatever the position is. I don't want to hear some there's just no God, or something silly. I want to know, why do you actually believe that? So in debate, you are able to hear that, and hopefully without interruptions. Let's say you've got 10 minutes for your opening statement or whatever that time might be. That person's not being interrupted. They have the floor. You respect them. It's their time to make their case. And that's great. Everybody gets to gets their time to make their case. And I think that's just hugely valuable, because you just don't get that when everybody's just talking over each other, or, sort of like a, talking head style thing on Fox News or whatever your TV show is, where it's more about the big argument going on where everybody's talking over everybody. That's just not helpful. You want to hear arguments.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking too, that also harkens back to the format of the debate. You mentioned modern day debate. One of the things that I get frustrated on that channel about is a lot of times the format is each person gets a opening statement, and then they open the floor to open discussion. Then they take audience questions, and then they might do a closing. There's not a lot of time to rebut in a formal way, and so all the points aren't really hit upon. Where when you have a more formal format, so for example, each one gets a 20-minute opening statement, 10-minute rebuttals, maybe a cross-examination, then a closing, you can get a little bit more content covered directly.
Mm-hmm. Now, reason number 3, you find out where the cutting edge of the, quote, debate is, hopefully. And what I mean by that is that if you've got the primary defenders of a position laying out their best arguments for their position, you find out where the argument actually is. To come back to arguments that people are actually using versus not, the ones that are actually persuasive and that people are still arguing over. That's a good place to learn what are the actual arguments in use, not ones that have been retired because, no, that is not a good argument. It's sort of been retired or or defeated or unpersuasive or useless in certain contexts. So maybe for perennial arguments like the existence of God, maybe they don't shift overly much, but other areas like, let's say, abortion debates, that's a great place to find out what people are arguing. It might be way different now than it was 20 years ago. What are the current debates? Because of the changes in technology, changes in healthcare, changes in laws, stuff like that. So now, if you're listening to debates, it would be better to listen to all the old ones, but listen to the new ones, because the battlefield might have shifted its sort of terrain. The landscape has changed. So you want to find out what is the cutting edge of the current debate on this topic. So that's what I think is valuable about debates in that sense.
Yeah, and as you say that, I'm thinking about, for example, William Lane Craig's debate with Alex Rosenberg, and Craig offered the moral argument, and Rosenberg got up there and offered the euthyphro dilemma, as if that was some new earth-shattering argument, and philosophy had advanced past the euthyphro.
It's like he just, the only thing he had to reference was like some 1950s textbook, like as if that was cutting edge,
And so even, both believer and unbeliever, as they listen to that, were kind of thinking, how does Rosenberg not know that has been defeated, at least, especially the form that he presented in the debate? So that's an example of even how philosophical thought advances, and you got to be on the cutting edge of that, and debates help with that.
Yeah. Okay, my point number 4, why you should be listening to debates, and I steal this one from Wintry Knight. If he's listening, shout out.
What's up, Wintry?
So you get used to hearing the opposite point of view without getting scared, nervous, or anxious, and you get a thick skin. So I remember, certain topics before I was exposed to the other points of view. When I would hear the other point of view, I would get very nervous, and I would almost want to turn that off. No, don't even listen to that. You know what I mean? Because that's an unbeliever, or is a non-Christian atheist. Turn that off. There was a time when I was an ardent and only been exposed to a young Earth view, and when I would listening to, say, podcasts from people who held an old Earth view, I got disgusted and wanted to just turn it off. And looking back, I'm glad that that's not the case anymore. That if I disagree with a different point of view, I don't get nervous, I don't get scared or anxious or upset or red-faced or something, or like sweating, like, well, what would I say? I don't know how to respond to this, or no, this is new information. No, it's like, no, I want to be exposed to as much of the other point of view as I can in the proper dose for my Christian maturity level. Obviously, that sort of thing comes into play. But you can't run and hide from the other point of view. You want to be familiar with it. Sort of like, a silly example comes to mind, but when soldiers are in basic training and they're firing weapons over their heads and throwing smoke bombs and getting them to do things with all kinds of stressful distractions, gets them accustomed to being like able to operate without getting distracted by, the heat of the moment. So if I'm having a discussion with an unbeliever or something, or skeptic, and I'm hearing things for the first time, I don't want to be in that position where this is the first time I'm hearing an objection. I've never even heard this before. I don't know what to say. I don't want to be in the position where I'm like trying to think on my feet. I want to be in the position like, oh, okay, sounds like they're going down this road. Sounds like they might be pulling out Euthyphro in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. And basically, from a chess point of view, you'd be like, okay, they might be doing this move or they might be doing that move. I've seen both of these. I know how I may respond to either one of these things. And my heart rate is still, 62 beats per minute or whatever, So back to restating number 4, you get used to hearing the opposite point of view without getting scared, nervous, or anxious. And you get a thick skin. You're not scared of hearing people objecting or calling names or, disagreeing. You're like, okay, great. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. And then I find too that as I listened to more and more debates and I was able to see how the Christian faith held up under scrutiny, if you will, that helped my confidence and my faith grow. And it also made me, it put a desire within me to want to learn those arguments as well so that I could have a case of my own.
And you've kind of segued into my number 5, which is you learn that Christianity can hold its own intellectually against the toughest critics. And that gives you confidence. That should boost your faith when you're like, wow, you know what? Of all the debates I've listened to, I don't really hear Christianity getting smacked down too much and looking foolish. It's more like, oftentimes it's like the rational view, the thought out view. Now, you might not agree with it, but you can't deny that it's rational, thoughtful, intellectual, whereas many times the opposing view can be caustic, emotional, kind of snarky, sort of gives you a negative impression. So I find my confidence boosted when I'm listening to debates.
Yeah, and least listeners think we're being unfair. Please refer back to Brian's point number 1. We're talking about when you hear the best defenders here.
Right.
So of course, if someone's thinking, well, I saw that debate between so and so and so and so, and the Christian got smeared, or they looked like a fool, or they were unkind. We're of course admitting that those are out there, but that's why Brian starts with, we're talking about when you listen to the best defenders.
Yeah. And, two people can walk away from the same debate completely still convinced of their own position and thinking the other side lost. So I'm not saying that's not the case as far as holding a view. But I do think if someone's fair and charitable, they have to. I do think that they should admit that the Christian defender often, hey, they are coming across, they are bringing arguments, they are bringing evidence, they are bringing reasoned responses. So if the debate happens to be, is Christianity reasonable, they win very easily.
Yeah, and debates do various types of work, right? I'm thinking, for example, you said two people can listen to the same debate and have a different response or still walk away not having their mind changed. But also debates can open your mind. So I'm thinking of when I listened the first time to Chris Date, who we just had on the podcast talking about conditional immortality. debate Phil Fernandez on the topic of annihilationism or eternal conscious torment. Well, when I listened to that debate, I was in the eternal conscious torment camp hard and found I think I probably would have labeled conditional immortality as anti-biblical, possibly. And when I got done watching that debate, I can't say I changed my mind, but I walked away going, wow, there's a lot more to that view than I had imagined. And I've got to wrestle with this. And so that's valuable in and of itself.
Yeah. With debates like that, it makes me go, okay, this person making this case is a really good defender and case maker. Mm-hmm. Who's the best case maker on the other side? Because I want to hear them. I want to hear the best arguments.
No,
I don't want to hear ones that I'm not even convinced of. Like, back to J. Warner Wallace's old podcast name, Please Convince Me.
Yes.
I'm like, that's kind of a cool idea there. Or I want to be persuaded that a view is true so that I can embrace what I believe is true. You don't want to be like, oh, let me just keep believing the way I'm believing. I'm like, no, if I'm wrong, I really want to know, not out of the idea of, well, I might be wrong, so I better not hold this. I want to be like confident in my view being shifted one way or another. It's like, oh, okay, well, if this isn't true, let me change,
Yes.
Okay, so number 6, and then we're going to give you guys a break for a coffee. So number 6, see how a case for a position can be made cumulatively and how critics try to counter it, often resorting to nitpicking. So what I mean by this is that I think it helps me over the course of time is help me to see different ways a case for a position can be made, not just using appeals to personal experience or randomly plucking out examples and illustrations or stuff, but saying, oh, well, you know what? I believe Christianity is true. And I've got 3 or 4 arguments here that I find persuasive. Now, there are many more, but here are 3.
Sure.
I think that's a great way to, say, introduce someone to the idea. If you're talking to someone and having a discussion, to be able to say, I think there's a lot of reasons that this position is true. There are many arguments. I think that there are 5 or 6 strong ones, but let's talk about 2 or 3. And I think that knowing, being familiar with the range of ways that a case can be made for position and making that known, saying, oh, there's a lot of ways I could make my case, but here are 2 or 3 I like, and let me share that. It kind of gives the person you're talking to the idea that, oh, wow, there must be a lot to be said here, rather than, oh, well, I think it's true because Jesus changed my life. Nothing wrong with that. But if you're making an intellectual case, persuading someone because, oh, this is true. I think there's reasons for this to be true, rather than, oh, it worked for you. Well, you're on keto, and I don't agree with keto either. You're a Scientologist. No. So at any rate, so the idea here is when you're watching debates, you can see how cumulative case can be made. You can sort of construct and put together a selection of arguments that you find persuasive and build your own case. So if William Lane Craig maybe trots out his 5 arguments or whatever in a debate, I might like 2 or 3 of those, might grab them. Oh, I'm going to use that because I like it. Here's how I'm going to modify it. I know someone else who makes his case a different moral argument. I'm going to grab that because I like that better. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm in the position to make a case, I've got these tools I've gleaned from these different people I've listened to, and I'm going to make my own toolkit, my own utility belt. Okay, ready for number 7?
I am indeed.
Number 7 is that you find out that the debate is way deeper than the debate. So when I say debate in the first sense, I mean the topic. Like, the debate over the existence of God is way deeper than the debate you just listened to.
Indeed.
This is just maybe the forward battlefront. There's way more to be learned. So it's like, oh, here's a good starting point for about 3 or 4 books I could start reading on this topic. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Same with, oh, well, I just told my view on abortion because of this. Well, go and listen to a debate and you realize, okay, here's the forward battlefront. and it represents miles and miles more battlefront behind each sort of different argument that may have been brought. And there's way more to the topic than you can imagine if you haven't gone down that road. So that's what debates do, is they're like this big front gate to a huge estate. And it's like, okay, this is just the introduction to this topic. If you go down this rabbit hole, there's this huge landscape of this really deep topic, and it goes in many different directions. So I think it's just a way to broaden your knowledge and through exposure to the best thinkers.
Yeah, and this is evidenced when debaters will often say something along the lines of, I can only scratch the surface here, but I would encourage you to check out my work, or I would encourage you to check out Scholar X's new book, because they realize that you can only scratch the surface and you can only go so deep in a debate context.
Yeah. Right. So that's my 7 reasons. And on that note, listeners, this is only the beginning of our discussion of debate. There's more to come where we're going to talk about actual debates that have really influenced us and impressed us and that we want to recommend to you. So see you on the other side.
See you on the other side, Ray.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you have a question you'd like us to address or just a message for us, feedback, good or bad, you can either email us at podcast@apologetics315.com or leave a voice message for us using SpeakPipe. Just go to speakpipe.com/apologetics315 to leave us a message. And remember, if you include a Ghostbusters quote in your question, we guarantee that we'll read it on the podcast. We also ensure up to 50% better quality answers. Also, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review in iTunes or the podcast platform of your choice, and please share this episode with a friend if you found it useful. Remember, you can find lots of apologetics resources at apologetics315.com, along with show notes for today's episode. Find Chad's apologetic stuff over at Truthbomb Apologetics. That's truthbomb.blogspot.com. This has been Brian Oughton and Chad Gross for the Apologetics 315 podcast, and thanks for listening.